Good morning, Mr. Carlos Ruiz. Today I'm going to be making a little summary about chapter 2.1, which is Fidel Castro's emergence to power. So first of all, we have the main character, I'm sorry, this man, historical figure, Fidel Castro. He was the wealthy son of a Spanish immigrant, and in the late 1940s, he was very, very mad, let's say, about the current situation in Cuba due to Fulgencio Batista being very corrupt, forcing alliances with gangs. He created his own secret service department, the BRAC, which was merged with all of these gang leaders. Um, and so he publicly told everyone that he was disappointed of Cuba due to people like Batista, due to his corruptions, and also after stating this, he actually feared a lot that he would become a very very big target for the BRAC or this secret service that Batista had, and so he fled to the United States. Um, Later he returned to the United States in the 50s. He actually was studying law before he left, and so he finished his law studies and he became a lawyer for these victimized workers, all these poor peasants, etc. After he rejected a very well-paid job that his family's wife offered, and he rejected it. Next, in 1953, in the Moncada, Fidel Castro wanted revolution, he wanted change. He ordained the Moncada attacks, and he planned to strike in the Oriente provinces to motivate the people for him to support him, to gain access to a lot of weapons, and to start a movement. This later became the movement 26 of July. Unfortunately, it didn't work, and all of the attackers were basically captured. They were um, captured, tortured, and killed for the most part. But a soldier, a black soldier, he actually took Fidel Castro, and he only took him to not to the barracks prison, but only to the federal prison, where he was then basically put onto trial, and he made a speech, History Will Absolve Me, in which he talked about how what he was doing was actually what was better for Cuba at the time, and that history, after some time passing through, it would be clear that he was doing the right choices. He was sentenced to 15 years. His brother Raúl was sentenced to 13 years. And so he was then later released because Batista wanted not to be seen as a oppressor, that he wanted to be seen as very inviting as he could. So he liberated all of those political prisoners in 1955, which at the end they only served 2 years each. Um, After that, uh, Fidel Castro knew that he would become a very, very specific target because he was the man trying to do the revolution. He wanted to change. And so he 6 weeks after the fact, after being um, out of prison, he left to Mexico again because he did not want to become a target. In Mexico, he met with Che Guevara, with Cienfuegos, and he trained 82 volunteers that later became some of his troops. And so during this time in which he was in Mexico, I'm sorry, his revolutionaries from the M26-7 movement, they were specifically Frank Paez. He was a very important character. He led all of these underground cells throughout Cuba to be prepared in order to, when Fidel came back, that they would be able to spread the revolution easier and quicker. Then Fidel Castro and Che Guevara and all his other people, they trained people to be good with peasants, to actually care about them, to gain their support, and it actually worked fascinatingly because Batista used to mistreat all of these people, all of these peasants. He would tarnish their opportunities to actually fulfill all of the basic needs that humans need. And so they would willingly turn and be and support Fidel Castro. Um, Later on, they did a second attack, which was the Sierra Mountain, and so wait, so during this Sierra Mountain attack, it was supposed to happen. It was in 1953. However, due to some issues that Fidel Castro and his 82 volunteers, they went from Mexico to Cuba in a yacht, the Gamma, and the yacht was very, very beat up. It was very old as well. And so they were experiencing a lot of issues in the way between Mexico and Cuba, and so they finally arrived. But they arrived 2 days later, which meant that the attack, the plan that they had already organized inside of Cuba, it had been 2 days prior, and a lot of things had gone wrong. And so Castro went into hiding into the Sierra Mountains, in which that was, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the date. That was around November 1956, because he had promised his people that he would go there and free them before 1957. And so he stayed over there hiding in the Sierra Mountains for long periods of time. He actually developed a lot of new strategies and military tactics in which he would orchestrate the attack of these military stations, in which he would do a quick hit and run and only steal the weapons, the ammunition, and everything needed. Through time, he gained a lot of traction, a lot of success, a lot of support, we could say. And then in 1958, after this back and forth between Batista's attack and between this Fidel Castro's attempt at this revolution that he knew that parliamentary would never change. And so Batista, on 1958, he launched his final offense, in which he took 10,000 soldiers and he sent them to Sierra Mountains. And unfortunately, due to the no support, no U.S. Batista had no more U.S. support. He had no support from the population, and he had that a very, very unified opposition, meaning that everybody that wanted basically to remove him from power, and also he had very demoralized soldiers. And so Fidel Castro and all of his rebels, which were now the majority of the population of Cuba, they easily took out the 10,000 soldiers. And then Castro did his final offensive, in which he threw all of his rebels into some very key cities such as Santa Monica, Havana, etc. And so this was very crucial. In January 1st of 1959, Batista fled, and basically Fidel Castro was in there for the power. We know he later became a very famous dictator. So thank you so much. Those are the 2.1. Thank you for your attention.